This is a CBS 42 breaking news report.
And welcome in. We have breaking news out of Washington concerning Senator Jeff Sessions.
Now, the former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, word just into CBS 42 this afternoon that the former Alabama senator has submitted his resignation to President Trump and will step down as the United States Attorney General, and that Matthew G. Whitaker, who is currently Sessions' chief of staff, will take over as acting Attorney General. This also confirmed in a tweet from President Trump.
And all of this started this afternoon in a news conference late this morning with the president, where he was asked about what he would do with his cabinet, and he alluded to changes happening. Shortly after that, a surprising tweet out of Birmingham today from Luther Strange. He tweeted Jeff Sessions for Senate 2020, which was kind of surprising. And really after that, it all began to snowball, and bam, President Trump releases a tweet.
The president was vague in the news conference this morning, talking about the midterms, asked about staff changes or potential shakeups in the White House. He really declined to answer a lot of those questions from reporters. And as Sherri mentioned, the tweet from Luther Strange that's gained some traction today, tweeting Jeff Sessions for Senate 2020. That was something we heard mentioned from the Roy Moore people after the election, was that perhaps the best option, as Sessions was undergoing these attacks from the president, would be to come back and run for Senate. We'll see about that.
Something we've continued to follow since Jeff Sessions got in as the U.S. Attorney General. A lot of concern from the president because of the Russia investigation. He felt like Sessions let him down. So there's been this tug of war pretty much since Jeff Sessions recused himself from that investigation. Back and forth, back and forth. We know that Sessions said that if the president wanted him to resign, that he would, because it was so tenuous, and just the undercurrent of Jeff Sessions being this sort of whipping boy for these text messages or tweets from President Trump. But we all know that it was Jeff Sessions who helped put President Trump on the map, legitimizing that campaign very early with that rally in Mobile. He was sort of a trump card for the president, and really rallied to support him, the first in the quote-unquote establishment who embraced Donald Trump.
This is video from Jeff Sessions in Hoover a few weeks ago, one of his most recent, perhaps the most recent trip to Alabama. We mentioned that Matthew Whitaker, his current chief of staff, will now take over as acting Attorney General of the United States. Whitaker is about 50 years old. He's from Iowa. He's working as the chief of staff to the current AG you see there, who has been beleaguered by this fight that he's been embroiled in with President Trump for a long time. Matthew Whitaker, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Iowa during the George Bush administration, and assumed office with Jeff Sessions as his chief of staff.
Sessions, he's been in Washington for quite some time, but between Jeff Sessions and Senator Richard Shelby, I think a lot of people thought that Sessions would sort of be protected a little bit in some of the rants from the president. We have our political analyst, Steve Flowers, on the phone right now. And Steve, we just want to ask you your reaction to hearing this news. Any surprises here?
No surprise, Sherri, that it happened. It's just surprise it happened so quickly. I think that Trump probably would have done this earlier, maybe a year and a half ago. He tried to coerce Sessions into resigning, but Sessions had a lot of protection in the Senate, having served there for 18 years, especially in the form of Richard Shelby. And Trump didn't want to offend Senator Shelby or McConnell or some of the leaders. So therefore, I think when he got some extra senators to protect him, he went ahead.
Steve, let's talk about timing. Why now? Why today? And do you expect a political future for Jeff Sessions, perhaps running for his old seat again, as Luther Strange suggested he do?
Well, I've said that for a while, that Sessions should run back for his old seat. He'd be a natural for it, and he would win, and I think that would be the thing for him to do. Now, Jeff's not as young as you might think. He is 72 years old, and he may not want to go back to the Senate. But he does, the rules of seniority are that if he were to go back, his seniority would be restored in the Senate. So he would go back with his same seniority status as if he were to run and be elected in 2020. That to me is a logical thing, but I don't know. Sessions has a lot of integrity. He's a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, if you will. Actually, is one, and his integrity would not allow him to not recuse himself in that Russia investigation. Now, Trump may find somebody who might do that, you know.
Do you think that Jeff Sessions remains an ally of President Trump with this?
I don't know that he would be a close friend with Trump after this, because Trump's really treated him badly. But philosophically, they're the same mode, so it'd be like, you know, philosophically they'd probably be on the same page.
Steve.
And I don't know that Sessions would hold a grudge, but I bet he left his safe Senate seat to take a 2-year stint as Attorney General. I don't know many senators that would have done that.
At this point, we're getting different reports of what actually happened with this Sessions, either resignation, CBS News reporting, our producer saying that he was fired by the president.
And Steve, I want to ask you about that, because while there's reporting saying he's been fired, it's also being reported by CBS that he wrote to the president today saying, at your request, I'm submitting my resignation. At what point is a resignation the same as being fired in the world of Washington and in this particular situation?
Well, I don't know how you would determine it, but I think if someone asks you to resign, then that means they're firing you, because otherwise they're saying, resign, I'm going to fire you, one or the other. Which do you prefer? And it's always better for history to say you resign yourself rather than the president just fired you.
At your request, I think, are the operative words. And Jeff Sessions has said from the very beginning, when the president expressed his displeasure with him recusing himself, Jeff Sessions said that he served at the pleasure of the president. And at that time, he did say he would not quit. The president would have to fire him. And so this letter of resignation saying at your request would suggest that perhaps this is not what Jeff Sessions wanted to do, as he has said, being the U.S. Attorney General for him was a dream job. Let's talk about going forward for Alabama. Ironic that Luther Strange made that tweet and kind of outed this whole undercurrent today.
And Steve, we've been hearing on Twitter from the party chairperson Terry Lathan today, tweeting about, we're going to steal this Senate seat back from Doug Jones in 2020, that campaign starts today. Do you think, given this break with the president and the now former Attorney General, is he a viable candidate as far as the party is concerned, when the party is very aligned with President Trump?
Oh, I think that the party will support anybody who wins a Republican nomination in 2020, and there are numerous people already preparing to run for that seat on the Republican column. Now, Sessions would be the best choice because it's basically his seat right now. That's his seat. It was his. Doug Jones is filling out his 6-year term, so Sessions is a logical choice. I think Sessions could win that seat easier than any other Republican could. Matter of fact, I think probably some of the potential candidates would bow out in deference to Sessions. So I think Sessions could win the Republican nomination for his seat, and I think he could probably win the seat back from Doug Jones in 2020. And I you know, if I'm a Republican, that's what I would prefer him to do. But now, like I say, Jeff Sessions is 72 years old, and he didn't love the Senate the same way that Richard Shelby did. Richard Shelby would have never, ever, ever considered. He'd laughed in Trump's face if he asked him to leave a safe 6-year term as a U.S. Senator to take a position of appointment that he can be fired from any day of the week, any time. But Sessions, like Sherri said, his lifelong ambition was to be a prosecutor. He loves to be that was his ambition, to be Attorney General. And he didn't love the Senate the way Shelby does. He was not as effective as Senator Shelby. He was more of an ideologue. He was probably the most conservative member of the Senate.
Steve, we want to thank you for that. Again, just a quick recap here. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions out in the Trump administration, submitting a letter of resignation at the request of the president per the letter. What the implications are from here, we will be following this story for you throughout the day, not only here in Birmingham, but in Washington as well.
There's much more coverage ahead tonight on the CBS 42 News at 5. Until then, we return you to our regularly scheduled programming.
This has been a CBS 42 breaking news report.